Welcome back to Garage Noise. Today we'll be painting this Jeep. You saw us repair the bumper in the last video, and today we're going to blend into this fender, blend the top portion, and paint this repair area. We're also going to be painting the silver hood. So we've got this hood all prepared. It was actually peeling very badly, so we had to strip it down, remove most of the paint, put some 2K primer on it. We used a U-Pole 2K primer. We sanded that down with 320. I repaired a couple dents in this hood. Now we've got it sanded smooth with 800 grit. That gives us this nice smooth finish that we can apply our base to. But we all know there can be some challenges with spraying silver. We'll go over some of those challenges before we start applying our base, and I'll tell you how you can avoid those, and I'll give you some simple steps that are going to help you when you're painting a high metallic or silver paint job. The first step in this painting process is to apply some color blender over the fender and the hood. So let's mix it up. Anytime I'm painting silver or a high metallic finish, I want to use some sort of color blender. Now, some people call this intercoat clear. They call it a clear base coat, a wet bed. Basically what it is, it's paint with no pigments in it, no color. So it's just binder. This is a product I got off Amazon that can be sprayed directly out of this can. Now, I found that it's a little bit thick to spray directly and not reduce it. So I reduced this a little bit, about 15%. That gives it a nice paint consistency where it's not too, it doesn't have too much texture and it goes on smooth. So we're gonna mix this with 15% of the slow urethane reducer. I'm gonna apply it over that hood and that fender. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna fill any of those micro scratches, and it's gonna give a good wet base to apply our paint to. So when our paint lands in this, it's gonna melt right into that. It's gonna be nice and uniform because we're using this wet bed. So hopefully that's easy enough for you to understand. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll try and help you out. Okay, I've got silver paint here. This is Nason XL. This particular color is PS2. It's Chrysler color for the Jeep. We've got two disposable cups here. Put our base in one, and then we're gonna put our color blender in the other, because we're gonna have that ready to go. When we apply our color blender, we're gonna go ahead, and while it's still wet, we're gonna apply one coat of base. Now, I'm gonna be using two different guns, but you don't have to do that. You could just switch over the cups. You don't even have to clean your gun after you do the clear base. It's just binder. The paint mixes up 2 to 1. We're gonna find our 2 to 1 mixing ratio here at the bottom of the cup, put in the amount of paint we want, and then we'll put in the amount of reducer and coordinate it with the amount of paint we put in. 3 parts of paint. One thing that's gonna help you tremendously if you're spraying a metallic color, the speed reducer you're using. Now, because it's a little warmer today, it's in the mid 80s, we're gonna use a slow urethane reducer. And I can't stress this enough, you need to make sure you're using the proper reducer for the temperature you're spraying, and especially with high metallics. Really, the slower the better. If I had some extra slow, I might use that. You know, it takes a little bit longer to dry, but it helps those metallics flow out so much better. 10 to 15% reducer to this. Make sure these are always sealed real well. All right, that's ready. That's ready. So I'm going to use the YT160 for the color blender and then the Eastwood for the base coat. These are both low volume, low pressure paint guns. Another thing that's really important is to make sure that your guns are spraying properly before you start spraying your base coat, especially with metallic finishes. It's a really easy thing to do, but it's also an easy thing to miss and not think about. And I'm terrible about that. I clean my guns after I'm done painting. And then if I get in a hurry, I'll pick up my gun and just start spraying with it. You want to be consistent with this, and every time you're spraying, make sure that gun is spraying properly. So I cleaned both of the guns, and actually I tried spraying this before I cleaned it, and this one was spraying perfectly. I still cleaned it out a little bit, but I tried this one. The spray pattern was a little bit inconsistent. That means the cap was not quite clean. So I cleaned it out and it's spraying perfectly now. These are low volume, low pressure paint guns, and in my opinion, if you're not spraying in a booth, if you're spraying in an open garage, this is the only way to go because it's lower overspray. Honestly, just the fact that it sprays with less overspray is worth it in my opinion. You may notice that I didn't mix up any sealer. That's because we're not going to be sealing this job, okay? Now I've got 2 coats of 2K primer on it. It's been sanded with 320, it's been sanded with 600. Yes, this is a different primer here. This is a fast drying primer, so it's a little bit different color. As long as you have a consistent surface and it's sanded properly, it's not always necessary to use a sealer, especially if you're painting in an open garage. When you apply a sealer, we all know that in an open garage, you're going to get more dust particles land in your finish, your paint job, and that also includes your sealer. So if I put a sealer on this, things are going to land in it, and then I'm going to have to let it set. I'm going to have to nib out those dust particles before I apply a base coat. And it's not really necessary because we've already got this in primer, and sealer is just basically a thinned out primer. Also, the color blender is going to help with that a little bit as far as acting as a sealer. Things you want to watch out for: sand piling. Sand piling is a roughness in your base coat. It's almost going to feel like gritty. And what's happening when you get sand piling is your metallics are drying too quickly when you're spraying it. So if you're getting sand piling and your surface is really rough, chances are you're using the wrong reducer for the temperature you're spraying in. You're using a reducer that's drying too fast, and that paint is actually drying before it hits the panel, and it's causing that roughness in your base coat. The other thing we want to be concerned about is we want to have a consistent metallic finish. Now, what can cause an inconsistent metallic finish is if your gun's not spraying properly. If you're not getting uniform metallics coming out of your gun, then you could have some mottling. And what mottling is, M-O-T-T-L-I-N-G, mottling, it's going to be an inconsistency in your metallics, so it's going to look blotchy. Your gun spraying properly is going to help reduce the chance of that. Also, when you're spraying a high metallic finish, you want to spray it wet, okay? The other thing that can cause mottling is you have an inconsistency in your passes. I'll wash this one more time with isopropyl alcohol and a clean rag, and then before we start spraying our wet bed, I will tack it off right before. We'll spray the wet bed, and then I'll immediately come over and spray a coat, a good coat of base on it. Okay, we got this fender tacked off. We're going to go ahead and apply our clear base. I've got it 3 turns out from closed on the fluid volume. The air pressure set at 25 psi, and then I got my fan pattern wide open. I'll put my respirator on. We've got a little bit of a reaction here, so I'm going to let this flash off and I'm going to put another coat on. I'll apply our paint. So if we look at this, Kind of looks like the metallics aren't uniform, right? You can kind of see streaks. We'll come over here and you can see how it smooths out and it's more uniform. Once it dries, it'll be a little bit more uniform. Now we are going to put another coat on this, but if it looks blotchy when you first put it on, don't be scared. It is something you want to be aware of if you see stripes. A lot of times if it's on wet, you're going to see that metallic striping until it cures and dries. We'll let this flash off and then we'll put another coat on. All right, let's take a look at this. Nice and silky smooth. See, we've already got a little bit of dust. Now that's just landed on it because we're in an open garage, right? But look at how nice and smooth this is. Nothing's coming off the tack rag because we put it on nice and wet. You know, I'm looking, I see a little bit of modeling here, but this is the first coat, okay? So the second coat should take care of that. Now over here, we have a little bit of an issue that we had some fish eyes, and I'm not sure if there's something on this panel or not, or if I just got it on a little bit too wet when I sprayed the first coat. But I'm going to take a little bit of 600 and let's see if you can see those. See those? I'm going to lightly sand those out because those are a little bit too deep to just cover with base coat. So a little bit of 600, we'll sand those out. We'll put another coat on this. We're going to tack rag this off before we put another coat on. We have these little fish eyes I showed you. I don't know if you can see those. I think I may have put it on just a little bit too wet. I don't think there's anything on the surface of this because that was primer. So I think I just put it on a little too wet and got some deeper fish eyes. So I'm going to sand those out with some 600 grit. It really shouldn't take much because those are a little deep to just apply base coat over. If you have some minor shallow fish eyes, typically you could spray just another coat of base on it and it'll take care of those. But these are just a little too deep, so I want to sand these out. Pull this off first, and then I'll tack it. I'm going to put some more clear base on this, okay? All right. Now we'll go ahead and put some color on it. Okay, we'll let that flash off. Let's put another coat on this hood. Okay, it's looking pretty good. We're going to tack this. See how smooth this is, nice and smooth. Now I do notice there's some light areas. I notice there's some scratches right here that I can see, so I'm going to hit those with a little 600. We're looking for any particles of dust or anything, and right there's one that we need to sand out. So see if you can see it right there. There is a particle of dust right there, or a little bit of moisture or something that we need to just sand out real lightly. Piece of 600, and I'm just gonna lightly knock that down. So I'm just inspecting this. If we're gonna spray it again, I might as well knock down any dust we see. Okay, so we have a little weird thing right here. It looks like some scratches that we missed. It happens. And then there's those scratches right here. All right, let's put one more coat of base on this. Okay, let's mix up some clear. We're going to use the FC710 Finish 1 clear coat with the slow activator. 4-to-1 mixture. We're going to go all the way up to the 4. So we're looking for thin, wet coats. We're using the YT160. We're gonna set it 3 turns out from closed. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Band pattern, I'm gonna dial it just back just a little bit, wide open, and then we're gonna go 1/4 turn back. The air pressure, we're gonna set it at 30 PSI, okay? I'm gonna spray the fender first, then I'll come over here and spray the hood. See how nice and silky smooth this hood looks? 30 PSI. I'm probably not gonna start off pulling the trigger all the way, okay? Got a little particle of dust in there we got to get out. Okay, we're going to overlap 75%, consistent speed, consistent distance, and you know our gun settings. Here we go, it's the next day. We're gonna get this all put together today, but you can look at the finish here. There's a few little imperfections here, just a light cut and buff. This fender will be ready. Color looks good. As you can see, there's no modeling. All looks nice and uniform. And here's the hood, most important part. And there's shadows here, but you can see it's all nice and uniform. Not too difficult if you just follow the proper steps. Nice and flat, but it does have some particles of dust that we need to take care of. We're gonna nib out this dust, and then we're gonna buff this.
If you found these tips on painting silver helpful, let me know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you want to learn more about paint and body repair, check out one of these videos now. I appreciate each and every one of you watching. We'll see you next time on Garage Noise.